The best performance in the state of Texas list last week in college football. Certainly, there were a couple of candidates that could have earned the honor. You had Memphis, Rice, who defeated Memphis 28 to 6 this last week, as Rice notched their first conference win of the 2011 season and only their sixth conference victory since 2008, of which that was the last time Rice went to a bowl game, and subsequently was over 500 in conference play. They won 7 conference games in 2008. So, props to Rice. Big win for them. You could also say that a team like Texas A&M deserves to be in the mix. They defeated Texas Tech 45 to 40 in Lubbock. A big game for Texas A&M. They got a big win after a 2-game losing streak. Baylor won this last week over Iowa State. There are a couple of good teams that really deserve the honor, but none more so than Texas State, I think, because Texas State is still on a roll and they are still going, and they really are impressing me and a lot of other people around the state. They defeated McNeese State 21-14 on Saturday, having to do so from being down 14-13 going into the fourth quarter. Texas State was in trouble. They were losing. They were going to lose, and if it were not for a Cowboy miscue on a punt where they bobbled the punt and Texas State pounced on it, if it were not for that, Texas State would not have gotten the opportunity in midway through the fourth quarter to get their final touchdown, an 11-yard pass from Sean Rutherford to Isaiah Battle, of which allowed the Bobcats to win the ballgame 21-14, and now the Bobcats are 4-2 overall, and now they are have a 4-game win streak, I should say, 4-game win streak. They are on a roll, due in part to their play of their quarterback Sean Rutherford, who has really made strides this season. This last game against McNeese State, Rutherford was 8 for 11. He threw for 110 yards and 1 touchdown. Very impressive numbers. More so the fact that Rutherford was the team's leading rusher as well. He rushed for 65 yards and scored a touchdown on the ground for the Bobcats. So he pulled double duty on Saturday evening, and he's the reason why Texas State won this ball game. So Texas State now 4-2 overall, and once again they continue to their winning ways. Coach Francione has a good thing going, and San Marcos. Up next for the Bobcats will be a big game against Lamar this Saturday, and the week after the play against Southeastern Louisiana. Both teams are not entirely good. Going into the season, Lamar is 3-2 and 1-1 in Southland Conference play. They're not exactly a strong opponent, and in the team that they play in 2 weeks, which will be Southeastern Louisiana is 1-4 overall. So for Texas State, things look very good, assuming they play the way that they played for the last couple of weeks for the Bobcats. If they play the way that they have, things look very good that they could go to this win streak could increase to 6 games over the next 2 weeks. Of course, a lot of things have to happen and a lot of things have to go right. But Texas State right now is looking very good. 4-2 overall. They defeated McNeese State 21-14 and hope to continue their win streak this next week. Longhorns, unfortunately, are going to earn the worst performances last week, and it's not because of what you think. It's not because of the fact that they lost to Oklahoma. This is a very good Oklahoma team that they played last weekend in the Cotton Bowl in Fair Park in Dallas. This is a team that has Landry Jones, who's in the midst of a Heisman campaign. This is a team that's on a roll, 5-0 now after defeating Texas. And in some circles, depending on who you ask, Oklahoma is the top-ranked team in the nation. This is not a bad Oklahoma team. So for Texas to lose to them, that's not the part of which I felt was earning, or maybe not necessarily earning, but getting the worst performances last week. It was just the fact that the way Texas lost, the way that they allowed Oklahoma to get around and defeat them, is something of which troubled me very much this last week, especially the turnovers, the problems that Texas had. And for a lot of fans out there, I think a lot of Texas fans will agree with me, this just felt like 2010 all over again. This just felt very deja vu like. The fact that you've seen this before. Texas turned the ball over 5 times against Oklahoma, 3 fumbles of which were lost. Two of those were returned for touchdowns, and the 2 interceptions were thrown by David Ash. One of those interceptions was returned for a touchdown as well. So for Texas, they allowed Oklahoma to score 21 points off of their turnovers. And the thing is, for this Texas team, when you know you're playing against a team like Oklahoma, who is outstanding in almost every way this year, that the defense is very good, the offense is even better, you can't give them free points like that. You just can't make mistakes and shoot yourself in the foot, per se, to give them that extra advantage. And then, of course, Oklahoma's offense took over with Landry Jones, who threw for 367 passing yards in the ball game. Jones was 31 of 50 for 367. He threw 3 touchdowns, but he didn't really have to work all that hard. In fact, Oklahoma pulled him midway through the third quarter because they were pretty much cruising in the third quarter. It was actually 34-10 at halftime, and then midway through the third quarter, it was 41-10. So Oklahoma really didn't have any trouble in this ball game. For Texas, the offense, it was a comedy of errors. The rushing game might be the only bright spot, but even then, it just looked like Texas never was committed to this run game the way that they should have been, at least in my mind. Malcolm Brown rushed for 54 yards, no touchdowns on 17 carries. If you're going to commit to the run game like that with 17 carries of Malcolm Brown, you got to keep going. And that's one of the problems the Texas team is having this year. The lack of a strong identity with their offense. And the reasoning behind that is just because of the fact that they're splitting quarterbacks. Case McCoy threw for 9 of 16 passing. He threw for 116 yards, did not throw a touchdown, and of course he fumbled the football twice. On the other side of the quarterback conversation here for Texas, David Ash went 11 for 20 with 107 yards, 1 touchdown, threw 2 interceptions, one of which was returned for a touchdown. So for Texas, the thing I think in my mind that they have to do going into this next game against Oklahoma State, they have to find one quarterback that they want to stick with and name that quarterback, whether it's McCoy or Ash. And really, it doesn't really matter who is the quarterback because both quarterbacks have had their issues. Just find one and stick with one. That's my complaint with Texas this year. They don't have a quarterback, and when you don't have a quarterback, you don't have an offense. Plain and simple. And Texas has shown that through this week. And yes, a lot of people will say, well, what about the past couple of weeks? The Iowa State game, the UCLA game, Texas's offense flourished under the 2-quarterback system. And you're right. But let's remember, those 2 teams, Iowa State, UCLA, their defenses are terrible. They're in the mid-50s to lower 60s, or maybe even worse. These are bad defensive teams. Texas kind of got lucky playing against some bad teams this year on the defensive side. Oklahoma is not a bad defensive team. And they proved it by just completely stymieing Texas for a very, very paltry 259 total yards on offense. That's not gonna happen. It's not gonna work if you want to defeat a big team like Oklahoma. And so for Texas, this was a very poor performance from the Longhorns offensively, defensively too. I thought Texas really should have done better in stopping Landry Jones. They didn't pressure him as much, and the secondary was just all over the place. They looked very lost. This is a very, very bad effort if you're a Longhorn fan from this team. And again, it's not so much that they lost, it's the way they lost, and it's disappointing. So for Texas now, they have to regroup, and it's not going to get any easier as they play the other team in Oklahoma, the other state's goal in Oklahoma State this weekend in Austin. Oklahoma State also coming in undefeated. And always, I think, for people that watch these Oklahoma State games playing against Texas, these are always high drama. So hopefully that keeps on going because these games are always high drama, very close affairs. So for Texas, they have to just readjust and regroup. That's the only thing I think a lot of people can say about this team. Readjust and regroup. If they don't, then this game against Oklahoma State is going to get really ugly really fast. Well, I guess the theme for the TX Sportscast Top 5 has to be every week they're shuffling because, well, I mean, there's been a lot of shuffling going on with the TX Sportscast Top 5. A lot of teams just aren't getting it done, and the top teams for the last 2 weeks have fallen. So, without further ado, here is the new TX Sportscast Top 5.
Illiterate kids, reason with random function.